Grandmaster Ian Rogers has kindly agreed to answer the questions sent by Amiel Rosario, the webmaster of the Closet Grandmaster weblog. So, Amiel asked, we currently have a debate in Australia about soft FIDE Master titles that were acquired from the Fiji Zonals, and he's asking Grandmaster Ian Rogers for his opinion and thoughts about this subject.
Okay, in order to understand these zonal titles, you have to go back to the history of the Oceania zone. After there were problems in the Asian zone of 1987, moves were afoot to both move China out of the Asian zone, and also there were suggestions that Australia should move out of the Asian zone. Australia's always resisted that because the only way to get reasonable competition in a zonal would be to be in a zone with our neighbours like Indonesia and the Philippines and so on. Now, for China after 1990 did move to a separate zone, and that was more legitimate because they were becoming a very strong chess country. Australia resisted all these approaches, and it happened almost every Olympiad that Campomanes and others suggested, wouldn't we like to have our own zone, and we would say no. Unfortunately, when a lot of the top Australian players boycotted the Alista Olympiad, some other players were there when it was proposed again, and this time our FIDE delegate didn't have the benefit of good advice, and since players were quite keen to get easy international master titles, they were very happy to have an extremely weak zone. So in 1998 the zone split and there was an Oceania zone, which as predicted was extremely weak, and also the rules remained the same. 66% in a zonal tournament would get you an international master title no matter how weak the tournament was. Then because the zonal was a Swiss system, open to anyone, lots of weak players were playing, and not only did quite a lot of people get 66%, but nearly half the tournament seemed to get 50% and FIDE master titles. The situation was so bad, and it wasn't just actually in Australia. Mexico started to hold zonal tournaments with almost no title players so that everyone could get a FIDE master title or an international master title. And the situation was so bad that Australia decided that the rules should be changed. So we contacted FIDE and said, look, this is crazy. You should restrict the number of players who get IM and FM titles from a zonal. So now it's restricted to one international master title and 2 FIDE master titles from the zonal, which was all very well, except the damage was already done in a way, and almost anyone who wanted an FM title had one, and almost anyone, well, and IM titles were a bit harder, but still there were some strange awards of the IM title. But these players who'd already got the title, whether it be a bit more softly than otherwise, didn't need to play anymore in the zonals. And the upshot was you have a zonal like Fiji, where really the field was much weaker than it could have been, and almost all the players who deserved an FM title were already FMs. So 2 new players were going to get the FM titles no matter what. And if you have a look at the strength of the tournament, you'd see that the players who were going to get the FM title were unlikely to be 2,300. As it turned out, 2 very promising juniors got the FIDE master title, so you live in hope that they will get the strength to justify the title, although giving them the title before they have the strength is a bit strange. So certainly you can't blame the players who played in the tournament, but if you have a very weak Swiss system tournament with a long tail, which was especially long in Fiji because there were quite a lot of local players who were not so strong, and the same applied in the women's zonal as well, then you are going to get players who get the title without performing anything like the level which that title is meant to show. So there's not much we can do except, number one, invite Indonesia to join our zone, so at least the tournament is significantly stronger. Number 2, which I think we cannot do anymore, we had an 8-year option to rejoin the Asian zone if we wanted to, and the chess politicians, in particular the head of the Oceania zone, Gary Becker, was against that. I mean, he likes being a big fish in a small pond, and so he can run the Oceania zone. Michael Freeman was similar in New Zealand, and so we don't think we have the right to rejoin the Asian zone anymore. Or alternately, we can establish a minimum level that you have to be in order to play in the zonal tournament. I don't think that's going to happen either, because the tournaments are run on a very low budget and they need the entry fees from the players to create the prize fund. So I think the problem's not going to go away. Perhaps there's a suggestion that the level required, as well as the percentage, needs to be a certain performance rating as well in the zonal. So perhaps you have to play at 2250 or 2300, as well as score 50% if you want to get the FM title. But these are, already a lot of players have got the titles, and some of them have subsequently shown that they were worth it, some have not. So, but basically maybe Australia has to approach FIDE again and try and solve the problem again.
I understand there is also a problem with the Australian Championship this year.
Well, there are often problems with the Australian Championship and the Australian Open. We have a championship every 2 years, the Open every other 2 years, and normally you would expect that would enable us to plan ahead by at least 18 months for each tournament, but it doesn't happen that way. Normally when the Open finishes, then people start thinking about where to hold the championship. And it's been a little bit later than usual this year, but it's only May. We've had decisions recently. I think 3 years ago the Australian Open was only decided in June or July. Of course, it's difficult for a player like myself, because I have other invitations, and if I think the tournament's not going to be good, then I have to choose to play elsewhere. And in this case, for example, I had an invitation to a good Grandmaster tournament in Germany at the same time. Normally I would have preferred to play the Australian Championship, but since we haven't heard anything, I've accepted the invitation to play in Germany. I can't hang around waiting. Most players who are not professional, it doesn't really matter, as long as they know the time where it will be. They can get time off work, and what city it is doesn't matter too much. But for me, the situation is slightly different.
Okay, thank you very much.